Hey folks, welcome back for another episode of Code Club. In this live stream, we are going to be recreating this plot that I found at the Pew Research Center. The Pew Research Center has been doing a series of articles over the past few months on the media, both traditional media sources as well as new media media sources, social media being one of those newer areas. And so they were interested in where people get their news from on social media. On Monday, so a couple days ago, I posted a video critiquing this visual and what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, the context of it, how I might try to do it differently. Well, we're going to put that aside for now, and we're going to try to recreate this visual using R with ggplot2 and other tools from the tidyverse. As we get going here, please feel free to introduce yourself, tell us where you're joining from over in the chat. If you've got any questions along the way, I would love to try to address those for you. Also, if you have ideas for things I should try as we go through the video, by all means, let me know that as well. Also, this will then let me know that I'm not just talking out into the void, that there's actually people out there watching what I'm doing here. I think I've got this going right, but you know, with technology, there's always something that can go a little bit haywire. So this plot, again, comes to us from the Pew Research Center. I'll go ahead and copy the link for this into the chat. And you can find the article there as well. It's quite short if you kind of scan through it. Yeah, it's pretty short, but like I said, there is a variety of other related articles from this year, from 2025, going back to May and whatnot. So like I said, it's an interesting bit of analysis. This article has two figures, one being these bar plots showing where US adults get their news from on TikTok by age and by year, right? And so we can see, of course, the younger generation, you kids out there, are more likely to get your news, to get news from TikTok, whereas the older set, which I'm not in this category yet, are very reluctant to get their news from TikTok. So anyway, that's the first plot. I'm not going to do that. What caught my eye was this plot here today, okay? And so I've got a zoomed in version of that somewhere here. Here, I think I started by showing you this. And so like I said, we're going to try to recreate this in R with ggplot2 and other tools from the tidyverse. If I actually go back to that article, let me grab that. When I was making that critique video, I noticed that in this How We Did This tab, they've got a variety of links describing how they did this, how they did the analysis. And there's a link here for social media sites. So if you click on that, and I'll go ahead and, again, copy and paste that here into the chat. And that this is a bit of it's a fact sheet, they call it, a social media and news fact sheet. And they've got a lot of the same data, perhaps presented in a different way, right? And so the plot that's most like what we're doing is this one here, right? And if I zoom out of this, you'll see that it adapts to the width of my screen, right? And so the version we're making over here is all of the social media sites in one row, whereas here they change the number of rows depending on how much you're zoomed in, and there's a few stylistic differences in here as well. But what was interesting to me was there is a link down here for detailed tabs. And if I zoom in on that, make sure that's the one I want. Yep. And if I hover over that, then you'll see in the bottom left corner of my screen there, maybe you can't read it, but there's a hyperlink there to a CSV file. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that link address, and we can then use that to read the data directly from Pew into our R session within RStudio. So we need to get RStudio fired up. So let's do that. And as that's firing up, I notice that we've got Mike from the UK. Thanks for joining us. Brian from Iowa State. Welcome. And Rents from the Netherlands. Wonderful. And I want to say Lori, maybe, from Toronto, Canada. So we've got a good mix of people so far. Welcome to everybody. So when we launch RStudio from the dock, like I just did, you'll notice that your working directory is specified up here next to the R version. I'll pause to point out that there is a new R version, 4.5.2. It doesn't really seem to have any new features. It has some bug fixes that I have never seen as a problem. So I'm not going to, I'll probably update it once I'm done with this video, but it's not something to really rush out to update. It's not super critical. But anyway, when we launch RStudio, we see we've got this /, and that's your home directory, at least on a Mac, right? And so what we want is that to be in our working directory. And so what I'm going to do is something someone encouraged me to do last time, which is to make an R project for these. So let's go ahead and click on this icon up here for a new R project. And let me get rid of my ugly face here. And so we're going to create a project using an existing directory. I already have a directory on my desktop that is called TikTok News. And in there, I have that original version of the image. So we'll go ahead and click open on that. And so this then will create a project for us. And so now what you'll notice is a little bit different in the upper left corner here. We have a new working directory. So desktop TikTok News. And down in the files panel down here in the bottom right corner, we have TikTok News Original, which was my PNG, as well as that rproj file. And so what's nice about that is I can then quit and come back to my directory, and I can then double click on this rproj file, and it will launch RStudio into that working directory, okay? And so one subtle thing to note is that if you're using Positron, they no longer use those rproj files. I'm using RStudio because I tend to use showtext and ggtext, which don't seem to play very well with Positron for whatever reason. I've filed an issue, and hopefully they'll address that in a future release here. But instead of you having to listen to me complain about Positron, I'm gonna do this one in RStudio, okay? All right, so again, we're in that as our working directory. And if you're ever confused about what your working directory is, you can always do get wd, and that will then tell you what your working directory is, right? And so let's go ahead and get a new R script, and we will do library tidyverse and get that loaded. Sometimes I get so excited to be doing these live streams that I forget to load my libraries. And so that gets us, as we see, dplyr, forcats, ggplot2, lubridate, per, readr, stringr, tibble, tidyr. I think we'll end up using stuff from dplyr, ggplot2, readr, tibble, and probably tidyr, right? So lots of good stuff in this meta package. So the first thing I want to do is read in my CSV. So I still have that that I copied over, and so I'm going to put this in quotes, and I will then call read underscore CSV on that. And if we load that, we can see what our CSV looks like, right? And so this gives us some information that it read in 9 rows and 13 columns. And it's telling us how it read in that data, right? And so all of this data should really be read in a numeric format. But what I'm seeing in the output here is that there's a footer to the table, right? There's a space in row 7, and then there's 2 notes, like a note and a source, right? And so what I want are the first 6 rows, and I would prefer not to have this really long gangly column name for the first column. You'll see down here that, well, you'll see right here that there's this little 1, which is a footnote. Our table has a footnote because our column names are so wide, right? And so that corresponds to this, okay? So the first thing we need to do, we've already read it in, but we need to get this to be tidy, right? I want a column for the year, the platform, right? So Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and then a column for the percentage, right? So it'll be a 3-column data frame. And so we got to get to that, okay? And so I think what we will do is we could do this a variety of ways, right? One of the things that I love about R is there's many ways to do the same thing. That is also something that annoys people, is that there's not like one right way to do things. So, okay, let's go ahead and then pipe this. And what I want to do is get the rows where this first column starts with 20, right? 2000 something, right? And so this is a long name, and I don't want to type that long name. So maybe what we'll do is rename. So the rename function allows us to rename a column. And so I'm going to go ahead and highlight this really long name instead of copying it, or instead of retyping it. I'm going to copy it instead of retyping it, right? And then I think the syntax is like year equals, and then that name in quotes. And so when you have a column name that has spaces in it, you need to wrap it in quotes. And so I'm hesitating because I forget if it goes year equals the long string or if it's the long string equals year. So there's one way to find out, which is to run it. And it worked. We got year first and then our column names. All right. Now what we can do is go ahead and filter this. And we want, again, the rows in the year column that start with a 20. So one thing we might think about doing is drop NA, right? So we could do drop NA, and then that would get rid of these 3 rows because there are NA values in it. But that will also drop next door and probably things like Threads and Rumble and Truth Social and Blue Sky, platforms where we don't have data going back to 2020 have an NA like we see here, right? So I think what I want to do is go ahead and remove, or maybe just focus in on those year values that start with a 20, and then we'll pivot longer and then get rid of the NA values in Nextdoor and whatnot. So we're only losing that year platform combination, not the whole year. Yeah. So what we could do then would be str detect. So this is coming from the string R package. So string detect, and I'm going to do a caret 20. So that caret means we want to match a string's beginning, like so that's the beginning, right? And then the 20. So the first 2 characters of the string we want to match are 20. Okay. And so we're going to do that. I guess we need to put the year first. So within the year column, give me those rows where the string starts with 20. Okay. And so there we go. We've got 20 through 25. We're in good shape. We could go ahead and convert year to be a numeric. And so to do that, we could do mutate year equals as dot numeric on year. And so now we see that year went from being of type character to of type double. Okay. And now we're ready to pivot longer, right? To get those 3 columns. So we'll do pivot longer, and we'll do everything but the year column we're going to pivot. That's what that minus sign means, is everything but year. We'll do names to equals platform. Yep, had it right, and then I have, and then values to equals, oh, and I've got the quote in the wrong place. Values to equals percentage, like that. And so now we get 3 columns, year, platform, and percentage, right? This will feed very easily then into ggplot2. But we have NA values here for some of the combinations that we already know about, like 2020 and Nextdoor, Threads, and Truth Social. One of the comments I made in the critique video was I was impressed by the number of social media platforms they had, but I was wondering why there weren't other social media platforms, right? Like Nextdoor. I live in a rural area, and I think Nextdoor is supposed to be more common there. Usually it's people complaining about other people who haven't mowed their yard, right? And so it's pretty, I don't know if other people have found a use for it. But I was surprised that something like LinkedIn wasn't included as a place to get your news, since that seems to be a pretty popular place for people to do professional social networking. But anyway, I have a Nextdoor account, and I think I might also have a LinkedIn account, but I don't use either of them at all. So anyway, so now what we can do is drop NA. And so you'll notice that we've started with 17 rows, and then when we remove those NAs, we go down to 52 rows, okay? And so that got rid of our NAs. Great to have you, Patrick, joining us from Kenya. Wonderful. We have almost all of the continents represented. It's one of the things I really love about these videos. I know I gush about that in all these live streams, but I'm just impressed by the geographic diversity that we get. So thank you all. And then we'll do ggplot AES. So our aesthetics that we want to map. So on the x-axis, we're going to do the year. The y will be percentage. And then we'll do group equals platform. So I want to comment this out for a second to tell you something that I've seen, or I see regularly, would be ggplot AES year percentage group equals platform. Okay, so these two lines of code do the same thing. And so the difference is whether or not the argument is named, right? So in the second one here on line 11, I say x equals and y equals. Well, if you look at the AES function, then what you'll notice is that the usage for AES, the first two arguments are x and y. And so those are, you can name the argument, but you can also rely on the position of the argument, right? And so at least for AES, I like to be explicit about what I'm using, what I'm mapping to what, because sometimes I might decide, well, I want to flip x and y. And so, yeah, I could certainly, change the order of these two variables. But at least in this instance, I like to be explicit about what I'm mapping to what. So this will get our year on the x-axis, the percentage on the y-axis, and then we're telling ggplot to group data together by the platform because we're going to do geom line. And so if we run this, we can see over here on the right side is that we have a different line for each social media platform. I don't have a legend for that because they're black, right? So if I had done like color equals platform, then we get all the different platforms on one plot, and we can kind of see what's what, right? And so I think the benefit of faceting is it's much easier to see the different social media platforms, right? So like this line that's going up and to the right is TikTok, right? This blue. But you'll notice that this other line that's like dropping down is a very similar shade of blue, but I'm pretty sure that's the Truth Social. So when you get, like we have here, I think 12 different platforms, there's just not that much resolution or differentiation between different colors. And so the facet helps with that, okay? So before we get going too much further, I'm going to go ahead and save this to a file, and we'll do ggsave, and I'll do file equals, and let's see, I think I called this one TikTok News, so we'll do that, TikTok news.png, and that PNG tells it that I want this to be a PNG formatted file. We'll do width equals 6, and our height, I want to match the height that they used in there. So I can do file on TikTok News Original and see it's 1280 by 840. And let's see, so we could come up here and do this. So we could do 6 divided by 1280 times 840 gets us 3.9375. And I'll just say height equals that. And I could also do width equals 6 and then something like that. Okay. And so now down here, I can do width equals width and height equals height. And so now I look over in my Finder and I've got tiktoknews.png and we are off to the races. So we'll now try to get this plot to look like this plot. And so let me go ahead and shrink them down to be kind of the same size. We'll go a little bit further. And that way we can do our best to match them. If you've never seen my videos before, I do try to do a pretty faithful representation of the original plot. And part of that is to push me not to cut corners on things and to actually like learn how to do things, right? And so one might say, well, yeah, I don't really need these dotted lines in between each facet. Or I don't need them to go up above the title of the facet, right? But that would be cutting a corner. I want to know, how would I do that? How would I get a line between each of these different facet panels? So we'll do that. Okay. So again, we don't want to color each platform separately. We want to put each platform into a different facet. And so we'll go ahead and remove that color equals platform. All right. And then we'll come down here, and to make the facet, we'll do facet wrap. And then I'll do tilde, and then the variable that I want to facet on, which will be platform. Okay. And then I'll also do nrow. Well, let's leave it like that. And I think, well, it's getting a warning. It's giving a warning here. So I'll come back to that. And so we see now that with facet wrap, it has given me 3 rows and 4 columns, and it's put them into alphabetical order, right? But I want 1 row. So, and I want it in the order that they specified here. So to get it to be 1 row, I was starting to do this earlier, but we'll do it here. Within facet wrap, I can do nrow equals 1. And that then gets the 12 platforms all in 1 row. The warning message we're getting here is that we're getting 2 of these, right? So each group consists of only 1 observation. Do you need to adjust the group aesthetic? And so if we come back in here, we could then do like count platform. And this will tell us how many data points do we have for each platform. And you'll notice that Blue Sky and Threads only have 1 observation, right? So you see like Threads here has 34, Blue Sky has 38. They only have data from 2025. And so we're going to get this warning message that we saw because we only have 1 value, right? It can't group 1 aesthetic or 1 valuable. It can't group 1 value with itself. And so it's going to be weird, right? So that'll be okay. And I think if we look at Threads, you'll see here Threads and Blue Sky, which back here, that there's nothing being plotted, right? And so what we'd like to do is to match their aesthetic, their appearance. We want to add on top of the lines then a point. So we'll go ahead and do that now as I'm thinking about it. We can do geom point. And it is upset because I forgot a plus sign at the end here. And I think it's still upset. So what did I forget? Oh, I still have my count platform here. Okay, we'll get rid of that. Great, and we have Hector joining from Mexico. Welcome. And Saeed from Somalia. Great, great to have both of you. I think we're missing someone from Asia and Australia. So if there's any Australians or people from Asia on, let us know. And if there's anyone from Antarctica, that would be cool. If we could get all the continents covered, that would make my day. All right. And so now we've got this working, and we now see that we have the points for Blue Sky and Threads included. They're getting clipped a little bit. We'll deal with that here in a few minutes. But maybe because we're thinking about the facets, what we could do is go ahead and get the facets to be in the correct order. Okay. And so what we could do is I'm going to make the platform a factor, right? And so let's go ahead and maybe I'll go ahead and also drop the year down, this mutate on the year down. So I only have 1 mutate statement. And so now what we could do would be like platform equals factor platform. And so that'll make platform a factor, which is like an ordinal variable. So it's a categorical variable with an order. But I need to set that order. So I can do levels equals unique on platform, right? So I want to get back the order of the values in the platform column, but I don't want the 12 values repeated 70 times or whatever it was. I want to get the unique set of 12, and unique will return them to me in the order that they were originally found. And so now when I look at this, I've got Facebook on the left, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Reddit, and so forth, right? But I am actually noticing that the order is a little bit different right? So like Threads, Truth Social, Rumble versus Rumble, Truth Social, okay? So we might need to go ahead and hard code this. These are put into the order of how they were being consumed by all respondents, not just people who use the platform. So this plot is only for people that use the platform. So 55% of people who use TikTok get their news from there. Whereas the 20% that we saw in the other plot was 20% of people in the US get their news from TikTok, right? So it wasn't just TikTok users. And so this is then ordered by across all the US. So we could hard code this. That seems lame. So let's go ahead and see if we can't pull it out of another CSV file from Pew. So this is what I mean by not cutting corners. Sometimes I cut corners and sometimes I don't, I guess. So this then is the other file, right? So this is % of US adults. And so then this one was % of each social media site's users, right? So we want to order it by % of US adults. So I'm going to go ahead and then copy this link address, and then we'll plop that in here, wrap it in quotes, wrap it in parentheses, and then do read underscore CSV. And then we've got some NAs, I notice. And so we've got kind of the same type of situation that we had down here, right? And so what we could do is we could copy. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And we need a pipe at the end of here. And maybe we won't totally copy, but let's see. This rename is wrong, right? Because that should be % of US adults. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and recopy this statement anyway because it's different enough. So we'll go ahead and plop that in there. And so now let's look at these first two lines. And we get this. And what I'm really interested in is the 2025 line. So maybe what I'll do is year equals 2025. Running that, we then get year, Facebook, and so forth, right? And so then we can pivot longer on that. And so now we get the year, the platform, and the percentage. And we could then go ahead and do a range on percentage. And so that's going to flip the order of what we want, actually. And so it goes Truth Social, Rumble, Blue Sky, Threads. And so let's go ahead and do a descending on that. And so now what we get is the platform. Let me see if that actually works. So we have Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, X, Twitter, Reddit, Nextdoor, WhatsApp, Threads, Truth Social, Rumble, Blue Sky. So this is switching the order as well. And oh, that's a pain. And so I think what we could do would be like mutate order equals 1 to n. And so that's going to create that column. And I want to change the order to put Rumble before Truth Social, right? Yeah, I don't know what they are using to sort these. Maybe there's a difference in the percentage point that we're not seeing. But anyway, I didn't really want to go down this path, but hey, whatever. So what I will do then is to say, what? We'll do order equals case when. So case when platform equals Rumble. Then we're going to return 10 when platform equals truth social. Then we want to return 11, so we're going to flip that, and then if it's anything else, we'll do true. That'll be platform. Okay. This is kind of a lot of work for I don't know what. What are you complaining about? Can't combine. Oh, okay. So it's saying, I've got an error. I see what it is, but it's saying error and mutate in argument order equals case 1. Can't combine right, which is double. So dot dot 1 double with dot dot 3 right. So this is, I think, dot dot 1. This is dot dot 3. And so platform is a character, whereas these are numbers. But I didn't want platform. I wanted order. So that works now. And so then we need to go ahead and arrange by order. And so there we go. We now have our platform and our order. And maybe what we could do while we're here is we could do another, we could add a line to the mutate, right? Because what I'm noticing is that like we have x/Twitter, whereas in the plot we have x line break and then Twitter in parentheses. Also truth social is on 2 lines. And I also noticed that TikTok is bolded, whereas everything else is not. So to pull off the bolding of TikTok and the line break for X and truth social, I'm going to use ggtext, and that will allow me to use markdown. So we'll do ggtext. And so let's come in here. And so we'll then say, oh, that's in the wrong parentheses. So here, platform equals case when. So when the platform equals TikTok, then we want to return ** tick talk, and that ** is markdown for bolding. So platform equals x Twitter. Then we'll do x and a break, so that's HTML for a break, and then we'll do in parentheses Twitter. Okay, and then platform equals truth social. We'll tilde truth, and then another break social. Okay, and so now, oh, I did it exactly what I wanted to do, right? And so I've got all these other NA values now in platform because I didn't include a true statement, right? So you want your case when statements to always output a value. You want to cover all your bases. So to do that, we do true, and then we would put in platform. And so now what we see is that we've got our platform, our percentage, and our order. And maybe what I will do as I'm thinking about this is I'll make this like pretty, and then we'll have the platform, the percentage, the order, and the pretty, right? So because what I'm thinking of is down here, we have, we have the order, well, so let's see. So let's call this platform labels, right? And so what we could do then, when we're defining the order in factor, so that was down here, right? So we could say our levels is going to be, I already forget what I called it, platform labels. So we could then do levels equals platform labels $, platform, right? So this should get it in the right order. Where'd you go? There we go. And so now we have things in the right order, right? So we have Rumble, Truth Social, Blue Sky, cool, and we haven't like hard-coded anything. But I want the labels, right? I want those nice labels. So then I can do labels equals platform labels $, pretty, and yep. And so now we see, you can kind of see the HTML styling for like TikTok, X, and Truth Social, right? But to then get those to be on 2 lines, we need to use element markdown. And so we'll then come in here and do plus theme, and we'll do strip.text equals element markdown. And so now we can see that TikTok is bolded, X Twitter's on 2 lines, Truth Social's on 2 lines, right? So this was a roundabout way that took about 10 minutes where, just to recap what I did, was I read in the data that they provided for the response of all US adults for what platforms they get their news from, okay? And I used that to get out the order, right, that we have here, as well as the pretty label, which has our markdown and HTML styling embedded in it, right? And then down here in factor for platform, I was able to turn platform into a factor and set the levels based on the platform column from my platform labels data frame, and then set the labels to be platform labels pretty, okay? And so then we could then use element markdown from the GG text package to render the markdown and HTML styling, okay? Hopefully that makes some sense. And so we've got AES My Fight from AES, so welcome. So AES is, I should know this. Can you tell us what AES stands for? I'm sorry, I think I know this, but I'm spacing on it. But anyway, welcome. And so again, to recap where we are, it's getting there, right? We've got everything faceted. We've got the labels on our facets. And yeah. And we've got our lines and we've got our points on the lines. So it occurs to me, I haven't saved this yet. So I'm going to go ahead and save my R script to be tiktoknews.r. I'm seeing more of like the lowercase r as a file extension for R. I still like having the capital R because, I don't know, that's what I've always done for 20 years or whatever, right? Okay, so now I've got that saved. So let's think about what we should take on next. Maybe because I've already been messing with the theme a little bit, I'll show you how we can get rid of the background. And so let's come down here and we'll do strip.background. So again, this rectangle above each of the facets is called a strip. And so strip.background, we can do element blank. And so that gets rid of the background. But something you'll notice is that our text is getting clipped, right? And so like you can only see like part of the Y and part of the Instagram, right? So there's an argument in here. So I think it's strip.clip. Yeah, strip.clip equals off. And so then this removes the clipping, right? And so we've got some formatting issues that I don't want to take on just yet because things are going to get wider, right? Because we're going to remove like the Y-axis text and ticks and title. And so things are going to get wider. And then we might also want to play with the font size here before too long. So let's go ahead and start messing with our axes, okay? And I think we can start with the titles as well as the Y-axis, okay? And so in here, we'll go ahead and do axis.title equals element blank. And that gets rid of that. There is one geom I know I am missing, so don't let me forget about it, which is adding on the numeric text to the points, the first and last point. We'll get there. But I'll just save a little bit of a goodie towards the end. That'll be our bit of suspense to keep you watching. All right, so we got rid of those titles. Let's go ahead and get rid of the rest of the Y-axis information. And so we'll do axis.text.x equals element blank. And axis.ticks. So that should be, that should be Y, not X. And then ticks.y equals element blank. And that's gotten rid of that. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and think about the x-axis. And so you'll notice their x-axis starts with 20 and ends with 25. And then in the middle, they aren't labeled. And they've got an axis line there, right? So let's go ahead and do axis.line.x equals element line. And we'll do color equals gray. And then line, well, let's start there. Oh, and it's upset with me. Oh, it's upset with me because color must be a character, and I just put gray without quotes around it. And so now we can see, if you look closely, you can see that line. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the background. And so, so we'll do panel.grid equals element blank, and panel.background equals element blank. And again, that I think helps to see that line down at the bottom. And we want to go ahead and change our labeling, right? Like we've got all 5 years labeled there with like the 2020 or 2025, right? Versus 20 or 25, or I guess there's a tick, right? So let's go ahead and clean that up. And actually, let's go ahead and look at our ticks. So we can do axis.ticks.x equals element line, do color equals gray. Oh, and I went over too quickly. There we go. And so now you can see that we've got our line with our ticks. And one thing I noticed is that the line hangs over the end of those ticks. If I zoom in here, right, we can kind of see that there's this little tail hanging over. All right. So let's go ahead and make that line thinner. So we'll do line width equals 0.3. And I'll use the same line width on the line and the ticks. And so you can see that's much thinner now. And I want those ticks to be longer. So we'll do axis.ticks.length.x. We'll do unit as the function that assigns to axis ticks length x or y. And then I'll do 5 pt, so 5 points. And so now we can see those are a bit longer. Maybe it could be 4. And I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so now we want to play with, we want to address that overhang as well as all the numbers, right? So we're going to do that with scale x continuous. So we'll do scale x continuous. And what? We want to do breaks of 2020 to 2025. And we want to do, I think, limits of 2020 and 2025. And then we want our labels. I'm going to do tick 20. And then we'd also want to do tick 25, right? But we've got 6 values on the x-axis, right? For 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. That's 6, right? So I'm going to put in here 4 empty values. And so put a plus on this. And so now what we see is that we've got our 20 and our 25 for each of those, right? And the font is too big. Maybe we can go ahead and shrink that font a little bit. And so that would be axis text, or I don't want to put it in between the ticks, so let's put it down here. So we'll do axis.text. These are tongue twisters. X equals element text. And we'll do size equals 6. Oh, and I forgot a comma. There we go. And so that made that font a bit smaller. One thing I am seeing is that I am centered on the tick, whereas theirs is not quite centered, right? Like the 20 is like left justified and the 25 is kind of right justified. It's not exactly, but it's close. And so a trick that we can get away with is by using hjust within axis text x. But we need to give a hjust value for each of the breaks. And we also have to know that we're going to get a warning about this because it's not what it wants to do. So we'll do 0 to make it left justified on the 20. And then I'll do 0 for the middle values that we're not showing. And then I'll do 1 for the rightmost for the 25. There's that warning message. And there we go. We now see that 20 is left justified and 25 is right justified. And so it's not exactly 0 and 1. Maybe we could try like 0.2 and 0.8. And so now what we see is that the tick, if I zoom in here, that looks pretty good. Like the tick goes down kind of between the apostrophe and the 2, and this one comes down into the cap of the 5. Okay. So again, the warning you get is that vectorized input to element text is not officially supported. It should be. I would love that. Results might be unexpected or may change in future versions of ggplot2. Okay, so we're living dangerously. Great. All right. So let's think now about the expansion at the end of our lines. And so I think that word I just used, expansion, tells me what I need to do. And so we could do, let's see, we could do it up here, right? We could do expand equals c 0, 0. And I think that will turn off the expansion on the x-axis, right? And so now we see, yeah, that worked. That if I zoom in again, we've gotten rid of that expansion. Okay, so that's cool. I don't think that's where it's going to end up living, but we'll get there. And part of that is because we are getting clipping on our points, right? Where the circle is kind of a half circle. And so we're going to end up using chord Cartesian. And so there was an argument that we already saw to deal with clipping, right? We dealt with the clipping of the facet strip title, which was strip clip equals off. So up here in chord Cartesian, we could also do clip equals off. And again, we have that warning. And I forgot, and I think I forgot a plus sign somewhere because I'm getting weird output here. All right. Probably right up here where I just added a function. Okay. There we go. And so now we see our points are no longer getting clipped. That looks good. So yeah, we'll deal with that. Looks good. And cool. So now we've got our data plotted. Let's go ahead and what should we do? Let's go ahead and add, I don't know what to do. Let's go ahead and add our titles. That's kind of a less stressful thing to worry about. And for some reason I can't, I think I'm gonna go back to the original plot and see if I can copy and paste the titles. There we go, okay. So we'll come in here and I will do labs. Make sure I get that plus sign before I forget. Title equals that. Subtitle equals, or sorry. For some reason, it's not letting me do that. So I'm going to go ahead and take a screenshot because I think that will save it into a format that I can then work with. There we go. Okay. And let's see, let's make sure we got the right title. Yep. And then the subtitle is down here. Got that subtitle. And then the caption equals this. Okay. And And so what I'm seeing now is we've got these red X's, or I guess red circles with white X's in them, telling me that I've got a problem with unmatched open brackets or parentheses, right? And so I notice over here that we also have red squiggles, and that's because we have double quotes inside of double quotes. So one way to deal with this would be to use single quotes here and here. I like to try to be consistent in my quotes. So what I'll do is a backslash before that double quote. And also, if I had used a single quote here and here, I still have that problem because we have a single quote here in don't, right? So to deal with that, we can escape out of the double quote using a backslash, as well as out of the single quote if we wanted with a backslash. And so I see there's another quote here, and I think that all looks pretty good. So now let's try it. That works. And so now we've got our title, our subtitle, and our caption. Marley says maybe it's better to set specific sizes relative to the base font. So base size equals 12, and size equals base size divided by 2. So I don't know that it's better to do that, right? So what she's talking about, like here, is like I use size equals 6, and so I could do like base size. Sorry, I don't know if you're she, Marley, divided by 2. So I guess I would. I mean, I could define base size elsewhere, right? And so I prefer to. You could do that. I think in terms of these point sizes, though, like if I do 12 and then I say, well, let's do like a third of that, or say I want to get to like 6.5. I don't know what 6.5 divided by 12 is. Like, I don't know. I think better in point sizes, which is what we're dealing with here. So I'm going to roll with that. If that satisfies you, go for it. But like I said, I tend to think more in terms of points than in terms of kind of dividing by some scalar. Okay, so that's how I'm going to roll with it. So let's now think about adjusting our text, and we'll start with the title. And I'm going to go ahead and bring in a Franklin font. This isn't exactly Franklin. And let's see. Let's go back here. And maybe they've got... go back further. Where is it? Okay. So this is their serif font, like they use for the subtitle. I don't see... Maybe this is their sans serif font. Yeah, I think that's the sans serif font. So if I look at this, I do inspect. That's in here. And then font family is Franklin Gothic, which is not exactly Franklin, but it's close. And we can get Libre Franklin from show text. So we'll do library show text. And we'll do font add. Oh, I need to load this. Okay. Font add Google. And we'll do Libre Franklin. And get that loaded. And then we'll do show text opts. DPI equals 300 to set the resolution. Show text auto to get everything loaded. And then we can come down into our theme and do text equals element text family equals Franklin. And so now this should replace all the text we see with the Franklin font, like in the title, right? And so now we have the Franklin font. And one way that I can tell that it's Franklin is like in the 2s, it goes straight down into the base, whereas with Arial or whatever my default was, there's a bit of a hump there going down into the base. Let's also look at that serif font for the subtitle. And since we've got this open, let's inspect that. And we see that's Times New Roman or Georgia. I wonder if we go to like font, Google, and I do Times New Roman. I don't think they have that. Or Georgia. Georgian. Yeah, that's not what I want either. I think that's like the country of Georgia. So let's see if I have let's see if I do Google font like Georgia, Gelasio. Let's roll with Gelasio. I think I've used this before, maybe with another plot from Pew. So we'll do font, add Google, and then we'll do Gelasio, and then Gelasio in lowercase. And so we'll go ahead and add all these. And so in text up here, as I've defined it, this will apply Franklin to everything, right? But if I want to do like plot dot subtitle equals element text, and I could do family equals Gelasio, right? So that will make the subtitle a serifed font like Gelasio, whereas everything else will be Franklin. Okay. And so now what you can see is that, sure enough, this is serifed, and everything else is sans serif. And the title, let's go ahead and start messing with the sizes and everything. So let's do the title to be bold. So we'll do plot.title element text, and we'll do face equals bold. And I know we're going to want it to be smaller because it's already going off the right side of the screen. And we'll do size equals 12. And there we go. We can see that it's bold. It's still too wide. So let's take that down to say 10. And that's coming in nicely. And if I kind of look at the size, we've got some extra margin on the left of ours, but ours could be a little bit longer or larger font, right? So let's go ahead and do margin. And I'm going to do T equals 5, R equals 5, B equals 5, L equals 5 as some generic values to get us going. And I think I used the wrong value, the wrong name. So I think it's plot.margin. In that case, let's go ahead and move it down here. There we go. And that didn't really move anything, so I think we've got pretty close. So I'm going to add margin to the top. And let's do 15. And then to the left, let's go ahead and make it like 2. And so that brought it down too far, but I like that left margin. So let's maybe make this 12. All right, let's go up a little bit to 11. And then let's make the size maybe 11 on that title font. And that's pretty good. It's a little bit long, so I don't know. We'll split the difference and go to 10.5. And I'm going to call that pretty good. Pretty good match. It's not a perfect match with the font, but I think it's pretty close. So now let's think about the subtitle. And so the subtitle, I notice, regularly is bolded and all of the text is italicized. And so because regularly we need to be bold italic, we're going to use element markdown to pull this off, okay? And so we can come back up to the subtitle and put a single star around the string, which will make it italic. And then around regularly, we can put 2 stars to make that bold italics. And then in plot subtitle, instead of element text, we want element markdown. And there we go. We now have italicized font. It needs to be smaller and it needs to be gray, okay? And so, yeah, so we can go ahead and shrink the size. And we'll also need to adjust the margin on the subtitle, right? And so here we'll go ahead and do size equals 7. Okay, that's too small. Let's take it up to, say, 8.5. And maybe 8 would be good. And that's like bang on. It's, again, not a perfect match of the font, but it's pretty close. And maybe if we did like 8.25, it would have a little bit more heft. That I think is good. All right. But we need to change the font color. We could like zoom in all the way. I don't know. We could try to use the digital color meter on that. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna, whatever. We can do this. So that, again, is the subtitle. We can do color equals that. It needs to be in quotes. And let's zoom out. And we've got ours. That looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and adjust the margin. And I'll go ahead and put that on the subtitle since I'm already working here in the subtitle. And we'll put in a line break here. We'll do margin equals margin, T equals 10. And so that was too far. So let's use 7. All right, let's do 5. All right, 4. We'll get there eventually. Guaranteed. All right. I think that's pretty good. All right. Let's see. Some comments here. I use absolute text sizes in static images, relative sizes in HTML. Okay, so the idea with font sizes is borrowed from HTML. You have the M there relative to the size of the element. 2M means 2 times the size of the current font. Sure. And I guess yeah, you could do that. That's cool. I mean, I'm thinking about the 2 examples we had here, right? Like 8.25 and 10.5. And yeah, I'm not going to be this precise if I'm making this plot from scratch for my own purposes. But in this case where I'm trying to match their size, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I gain by doing one over the other. And again, like I'm used to thinking about like the size of points that like I write in an 11-point font. And so I can kind of judge from that size because I'm so familiar with like an 11-point font on a printed page, right? So anyway, and also for like, I guess for people that are doing like scientific publications, if you look at your instructions to authors or if you're writing grant proposals and kind of the instructions there, they will oftentimes tell you the smallest font size that you should be using. And so that's going to be in points. That's not going to be in, something else. So I don't know. I think there's arguments to go both directions. All right. So where are we? So we've got our title, our subtitle. Now let's turn to our caption, which again has a mixture of regular font as well as bold font for the Pew Research Center. So we're going to do that with, and also we have line wrapping, right? So I'm going to do that with element text box simple. So we'll do plot dot caption text box simple, and that also comes to us from ggtext. And here we'll do color equals, I think, the same color. All right, and so that's left justified it. We also need to put in line breaks, right? So we need a line break after or before source, and we need maybe 2 line breaks before Pew. So we'll come back up here and put those in, and then we'll put a line break in here. And so now we see we've got that line break there, and we've got a line break there. But we need to shrink this down because in theirs, there is like the third word of the third line, whereas we almost have like 3 full complete lines. Okay. So if we come over here, we'll then do size equals, let's try 6. And so now that's too small because now we're at like 2 lines. So let's up it to say 7. All right, that's too big. So let's go to like 6.5. And there, that matches the line breaks pretty well. I feel like their lines, so, you know, if we kind of line these up, that their lines, move this down. Okay, try to line these up here, right? That like their lines are more separated than my lines, right? You can kind of judge that. And part of that's like the font size, but part of it is also the line spacing. So let's go ahead and adjust the line spacing in the caption here. And so we'll do line spacing, or line height, equals, let's try 1.2. Okay, that may have been the default. Let's try 4. So that bumped it. So there you go. That's pretty close. The Pew Research, I don't know that we've had this problem in the past, right? Where they've got some kind of weird spacing between those lines. So maybe what I'll do is remove one of these line breaks before Pew Research Center. And I don't know. I'm going to put it back in. That's fine. It'll look a little bit funky, and that'll be how we can tell the difference between our plot and theirs. All right. So that Pew Research Center, though, needs to be black. And so what we'll do is we'll come up here then, and around Pew Research Center, we can add HTML with CSS styling to change the font color. Okay. We'll do span, and we'll do style equals, and then we'll do, I'll do single quotes here. We'll do color colon black. All right, and close out that tag, and then close out the span. And I think it's turned it black. I'm not sure, but it's not bolded. So let's go ahead and make it bold. And again, we could do that with 2 stars. There we go. So then you can see it's black and bolded. Okay. Good. Let me just think here. So now we want to like adjust the margin at the bottom of the plot, right? To get it to move up. And again, we'll do that. We had plot.margin here, and let's take this up from 5 to 10. And again, because like my Pew Research is a little bit off, I'm kind of looking for the top of the note to line up. And so we can go up a little bit higher to maybe 11. And so that looks pretty good. Now we need extra space above the note, but between the note and the x-axis. So that we'll set in plot caption, where I'll do margin equals margin t equals 10. So we see that goes up. And so let's go up a little bit higher to like 12. And I think that looks pretty good. I think our font might be a little bit small. And so that was an axis text X. So let's see if we do like 7. So that's too big. Let's take that back to 6.5. I think that's reasonable. I think there is a bit of a margin at the top of that. And right here, I'll take that down to 6.25. And then I'll also do a margin here. So we'll do margin t equals 3. And so that should get us a little bit more spacing between the number and the tick. So let's do maybe 5. So that's too much. So let's go to 4. All right, I think it was probably 3. There's what we wanted. And then we can remove a bit of the top margin from the caption. So let's go ahead and take that to 11. And there we go. I think that's a pretty good look. Just kind of sizing this up. That all looks good. So now we need to turn back to the plot. And I'm noticing that our subtitle moved a bit. So maybe remove some of this, the margin below the subtitle. Or above the subtitle. Let's go to like 2. Okay, I think that's decent. So yeah, now we want to turn our attention to the plot. And let's start with the easy stuff. Let's start with the line and the point coloring, right? And so, or actually, let's since we're working in the theme function, let's go ahead and get our fonts to be sized better, right? And so, again, that was in strip text. We could then do size equals 6 as a start. And I think it could be a little bit bigger. So let's do 6.5. And it looks pretty good. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. All right. Now let's go ahead and think about our geoms and the stuff with the rest of the plot. Okay. So those points are solid black, and we want them to be circles with a white fill. And so for that, we can do shape equals 21. It's my personal favorite plotting symbol. We can do fill equals white, and then color will be the border of the point, right? So if I come back to my digital color meter, we can get the color for the line and the border, and then we'll plop that in here. And then geom line will be the same color. And so one thing to note is that if I do color equals this hex code outside of AES, then all of the points or all of the lines will have that aesthetic, right? We're not mapping a column from a data frame to an aesthetic. We're applying it to everything. And there we go. We now have that maroon line with the circles. We want the line to be thicker. We want it to be almost as thick as the circle at the end of the point, which I feel like the circle's the right size. So we'll come back up to geom line. And we'll do line width equals, let's start with 2. Okay, and that's too thick. So let's go to say 1.5. And maybe could go a little bit smaller. I did 1.5, let's do 1.25. And I think that's pretty good. Okay, so we've got that like dumbbell barbell look. Okay, cool. All right, so now what we want to do is, let's see. So one thing that's kind of disturbing me is that there's a different margin on, well, let's go ahead and add, what to do. Something that's bugging me is the space on the left side here, whereas mine's like right up against it. And so I think what we could do maybe is change the left and right margin. And so our plot margin on the left is 2, and on the right I have as 5. And so we can shrink the right because it's not as wide, right? And we'll bring that to 2. Oh, that was too far. All right. I think I was looking at the wrong plot to pick out the size. Yeah, so there could be more space on the right side. So instead of 5, I want to go larger. So let's go to 8. And I think that looks pretty good. Then on the left, we want to add margin to bring things over, but then we're going to subtract the amount that we add from the plot from the left margin on the plot, title, subtitle, and caption. Okay, so hopefully that makes some sense. So again, that's on the left. So let's take that up to 8. So I added 6. And so that brings that over. And so I now need to subtract 6 from the left of the title, right? So we'll then do margin equals margin, L equals minus 6. Let's see what that looks like. And so now what you see is that our plot is still moved over, but our title then goes back. So we want to do the same thing with our subtitle. And so then our L is minus 6. And then our left is minus 6. And so now what we see is that we have the same margin on our title, subtitle, caption as we had here or before, but our plot is tabbed over. And what I'm noticing is that I seem to keep losing the spacing on my subtitles top margin. So I wonder what I'm doing differently. All right, let's up that to say 6 as well. And so that brings that down. And so, yeah, all right. Now let's think about something that we could do then is to add extra margin below our subtitle. And what I would want then is for the positioning, well, I'm not sure what I want to do. All right, let's not worry about the margin below the subtitle just yet. Let's worry about getting the points labeled, the first and last point of each series labeled. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to make a different data frame. I'm going to make a separate data frame. Okay, and so back up here, we have this. So I'll call this social data. Okay, get that loaded, and then I'll pipe social data into here. And I'm going to rerun everything to make sure that nothing's changed. So that all looks good. And we'll then go ahead and I'm going to take social data And I want the first and last year of data from each of these, right? And so what we could do, so what I'd like to do would be like a slice head, slice tail, all in the same thing, or slice min, slice max, all in the same thing by the year. But that's not going to work. So I think what we want to do instead would be like a nest data equals minus platform. And so then that gets us a tibble for each platform, right? Where we have 6 rows and 2 columns. The 6 rows are 20 through 25, and the 2 columns then are the year and the percentage. Then what we can do is we can feed this to a mutate, and I'll do head tail. So that's what the new column is going to be called, and it's going to be a tibble itself. And then we'll do map, and so we're going to map over the data column, right? And so this data column, each value in data is then going to go into a new function, right? And so that function is going to be well, if we think about it this way, so let's do slice max on year. And so that's going to be $x $year, because this argument is $x, and we want the year column from X. So if we do that, it is upset. So we're going to order by, let me double check that I want that. Slice head, slice tail, get the first and last row, slice min, slice max, select the rows with the smallest to largest values of the variable. And so I thought I did that. So slice max is going to be getting the $x, and I want to order by year. And so I think that needs a tilde. There we go. And so then if I unnest the head tail, then that is going to unnest the largest year from that, right? But I also want, let me copy this and comment that out. I want the smallest too, right? So slice min. And so this then gets me the smallest year for each of those tibbles. So I want to put them together. And so what I'm going to do is bind rows on slice min and slice max, like so. And I think I'm missing a parenthesis somewhere. Yeah, probably here to close out the mutate. And so now what I get is, like, for Facebook, I have 2020, 2025, 54, 53, right? And I think if I go ahead and do a print n equals inf on all of these, if we think about like blue sky, we have 2025 represented twice, right? And so I think what we could do would be like distinct on bind rows, all this. And so then this will not give me 2 rows for threads or blue sky, right? So now I get 1 row for threads and blue sky because there's only 1 year worth of data, right? Okay. So we now have this label after all that fun with mutate. So let's go ahead and put this on separate lines so things don't run off the right side of the screen. And we'll run it and make sure, well, we haven't incorporated it yet, right? So we'll go ahead and call this labels on social data. And then what we want to add is another geom. So we'll do geom text, and we'll do data equals labels. And then we'll do AES. So our X is going to be the year, which we've already got up here. The Y is the percentage. Group is the platform. But our label needs to be percentage. Okay. All right. And so there we go. We have our text on our points. Great to have you, Majed, joining from Saudi Arabia. Thanks for joining. All right. So that's great, right? What I'm noticing is that our data are centered horizontally and vertically on the point. Also, our text is a bit big. Why don't I go ahead and shrink the text? Also, the Geom text is using the built-in, the default font. It's not using my Franklin. So I can come back up to Geom text here. And I could do family equals Franklin. And so that gets me the Franklin font. Again, I can tell by looking at the 2. I want to shrink that down though. And so we'll come back up to Geom text here. Maybe I'll put, put this on. Oh my fingers have stopped working. All right, got to get back. The final drive of this visualization. All right, so we'll do family equals Franklin. Size equals, let's try 6. And we'll do size dot unit equals PT. And that is too small, right? Okay, so we want it to be a bit bigger. Come back up to Geom text here. And let's do 7. And it could be a little bit bigger. So let's do 7.5. And I think that's good. All right, so now we want to get the label off the point. So we know, again, we want the left point to be kind of left justified and the right point to be kind of right justified. So we saw this down here where we used 0.2 and 0.8. So I think I'm going to do the same thing again, where what I will do, I think I'm going to define that in my label, my platform labels, right? Or not platform labels, my percentage labels. Maybe I'll call this percentage labels because I've got 2 labels data frames. So I'll then update that down here. Okay. And so now, again, in percentage labels, we have this. And I need to add an HJust parameter, right? And so we'll pipe this to mutate. We'll do HJust equals, and I'll do an if else. So if the year equals 2025, then I want it to be kind of right justified. So we'll do 0.8. Otherwise, we'll do 0.2. And let's get that loaded. And then down in Geom text, here in AES, with ggplot2 version 4, I can now give it HJust as an aesthetic. Okay. And so that's an argument that you couldn't do with the old version of ggplot2. And so now what we see is that, like, instead of being centered, like that 5 is right on the dot, maybe over a little left, and that 3 and 53 is just right. That looks good to me, right? One thing I'm thinking about is, yeah, so like these where there's only a single point, it's also kind of right justified. So I think we're good there. Now what we want to do is move things up or down. And so I think we're going to have to do that with a case when, because some of these are below, right? So like the TikTok 22 is below the point. The X Twitter is below. There's like 5 or 6 of these that are below and the others are above. And so I'm going to do it somewhat manually, but I'll use a case when statement. And so let's go ahead in here then and do nudge Y. And let me just double check Geom label. And I'm forgetting, or Geom text is what I really want, but I think that's in here as well. So geom-text is what I really wanted. But let's see, is that an aesthetic? I think it's like nudge Y. So there's X, Y, and VJust. I don't think I want VJust. So let's go ahead, and I think what I'll do is I will make a Y label, and that is going to be case when. So case when, let's do true, and then this is going to be percentage. Let's do percentage plus 2. So we'll move everything up 2 percentage points, but that's Y label. So I need to come in here then with my AES and do Y equals Y label. And I think I forgot to load Y label. All right, I was so excited. All right, so now we see that our text is above all the points. And so it's up to, it could probably go up 3. So let's do percentage plus 3. And I think that's, probably too high. So let's do 2.5. All right, that's good. And so those are most of the points. But we can see some, like this 22 on TikTok and 57 on Twitter, are getting run over by the line. And we want those to be below. So let's do modify our case when. So that was in my percentage labels. So we'll do case when. Let's do year equals 2020. And then we'll do platform percent in percent. We'll give it a vector of platforms where we want it to be below. And so the first one is TikTok. And again, we have to use the label. So that's got the markdown included, and that needs to be in quotes. And then where else is it below and in 2020? So Nextdoor is actually in 2021. All right. Let's see. Trying to think of a creative way to do this. So let's do year not equal to 2020. So do TikTok, Nextdoor is below, and then Threads and Rumble. Well, I guess Threads is going to be 2025. So Rumble is below. And then that is going to be percentage minus 2.5. And for the reveal, it didn't work. Let's see. So that's the Y label. So if the year is not equal to, not equal to 2025. All right. There we go. And so now we have the 22 below. Let's make sure we match these. The 22 is below here. The 23 is above. 13, 15, 34 we haven't gotten to yet. The 48 is below. All right. So that Nextdoor is not 2025. Maybe I misspelled Nextdoor. It's one word and the D is not capitalized. All right. Now let's try it. There we go. Now the Nextdoor is below. All right. Now we want to do the same thing, but when the year is 2025. Right? And so we want to replace those platforms where the 2025 number is below. So that X Twitter. So again, this is going to be X break parentheses Twitter. That's below. WhatsApp. is below threads is below, and then truth break social is below, and blue sky is below. And that's one word with S lowercase. And so then that's going to be percentage minus 2.5. All right. And so there we go. We've got our 38 below, our 55 below. Bam, bam, bam. Awesome. We did it. With a little bit of kludginess in that case when statement, but I'm happy with that. Okay. Thanks for joining us, Rents. And let's now turn our attention to, so the plot looks a lot like theirs at this point, right? What we still need to work on is perhaps the hard, what is most interesting about this, right? And that is getting the dotted lines between the panels and having the dotted lines extend down below the x-axis and above the facet strip. And then we also want to make the tick-tock have this like brownish background, right? So how do we do that? Well, let's start with the dotted lines. So the dotted lines, we might think about making like some type of border around a facet panel, but we can't do that so easily. We'd have to do like all four sides, I think, and it wouldn't include the strip at the top. So what I'm thinking about would be like geom segment, right? So I could do like geom segment, or you might think about like geom v-line. So geom v-line allows you to draw a vertical line, but geom v-line is, I think, going to start, is only going to run the span of the panel. Geom segment, however, I think we could use to extend the full length of from below to above the panel, okay? And we're going to be plotting outside the plotting window because we're going to be obviously going below the x-axis and above the top edge, right? And so we're going to want to turn off, we have the clip off for chord Cartesian, which we already have, right? And we're going to want to set the y limits as well as the x limits within chord Cartesian. So let's start to get that set up. So up here, within scale x continuous, I put the limits inside there. We're going to have to put that down here in chord Cartesian, and we'll do x lim on that. And then y lim, we're going to put our limits. So let's do like 0 to 70 and see what this looks like. Okay, so not a whole lot changed, except that I could tell that our points, our lines got a bit compressed, right? And so let's start on the bottom. And I don't think the y-axis is at 0. And so let's make it maybe 10. And so you can see that brings that down. And so like this looks pretty much like that. So that's all good. I feel like our 53 here is below their 53. And so I want to remove some of the upper limit. And so I had 70. Let's make it 60. Okay, so that's now too high up. So let's maybe make it 65. And that might have done it. So if I take this 59 and use my crosshairs to drag it over, it's a little high. So I want to add a little bit more limit to the y-axis. So that's at 65. Let's go 68. So you can see that brought that down. And I think that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. Well, let's leave that there. Although something I'm thinking is that might change because we've got to now add margin between our subtitle and the strips. So let's go back up to our subtitle, and then we want to add like b equals 5. Okay, so that gets us some spacing there. It also seems to have removed some spacing at the top of our subtitle. So the subtitle margin is kind of being weird. So let's make that 7 and 6 or 5. So I think that looks good. These titles look pretty good. They could maybe be, they seem kind of faint to me. I wonder if the strip text could be like color equals black. So the default theme is theme gray, which kind of makes a lot of text elements gray. That kind of helped. Just kind of looking to see. Yeah, let's roll with that. And yeah, okay. So that's good. But again, returning to our limits, now that 59 is quite a bit too low. So we need to remove some limit from the top. So ylim of 68, let's take that to 65. Bring that 59 over. And that's right on. Okay. So I think that's all set up right. Now, again, what we wanted to do was draw in our vertical lines, our line segments. And so we could do that one of two ways. So let's come in here and we'll do geom segment and get a plus on that. And we could do x equals, and let's say 2025.5, and y, if we do like 0 to, so this is going to be y and y end equals 70. Now we've got our vertical lines between our plots, right? And of course, it's not styled the same way, but whatever. And I think 2025.5 did a pretty good job of splitting the difference. We probably don't want to go down to 0. Maybe we could go up a bit from that. The other thing that I notice is that on the right, we have a line for blue sky, but they don't have one. And so what I'm going to do, instead of using geom segment, is I'm going to use annotate. And so annotate, we could then do, well, we could do geom equals segment, right? And then we're going to use those positions. And so if I run this, nothing changes, right? But there's a new argument in the new ggplot2, right? And I think we saw this last week, but that is the layout argument, right? And so if I do like layout equals 3, then that is going to put my vertical line for panel 3, right? And so something I was wondering is, can we vectorize this? Could we do 3:6? So we do 3, 4, 5, 6. So we should get 4 lines. Sure enough, we can. So what we could do would be like layout 1:11 to get a line on the right side of each of those plots. So let's do that. So again, we did that back up here. We could do 1:11. And there we go. We now have our vertical lines between all of the facets. Cool, huh? Again, that is a new feature in the latest release of ggplot2. So if you're using an old version of ggplot2, then you need to upgrade because there's a number of really cool things, right? So Mike, you noticed you need to change the v-just in your panel labels. Good eye, because they're all top justified. So let's do that really quick. So that's strip text, and we'll do v-just equals 1. And so that then justifies them, and it changes Um, it changes that blasted margin again. So let's bump that down because we want that to be in place before we figure out the Y end and Y positions, right? So again, that was plot subtitle. Let's take this to 7. And that brings that down. That looks pretty good. This 59. We can remove, again, a little bit of margin on the chord Cartesian. Let's take this to 63. And if we drag this over, oh, just too much. All right, so it was 63, it was 65. Let's do 64. And I think that will have us in good position, okay? Cool, all right. So we have 64 as the limit, right? So like this point here where my crosshair is 64, but we want to go up maybe to 70. So let's take our, well, that does go up to 70. I think do I know what it's doing? I don't know. So my Y limb goes 10 to 64. My Y end is 70. So that seems weird. If we go up to 80, that does it. Okay. So we want to bring that down. Let's make it, say, 75. And that looks pretty good. The bottom we have at 0, and it could probably come up to like maybe 2. Okay, it needs to go down a little bit. Let's do 1. And I think that looks pretty good. Okay, now we want to convert that to be a thin dotted line. And so again, that is an annotate back up here. And we can do line width equals 0.2. And then let's do line type equals dotted. And that doesn't look so bad. I think theirs is a grayish color. And so maybe it could be gray and a little bit thicker. So let's do 0.3. And we'll do color equals gray. I think that looks pretty decent. What do you think? One thing I am feeling now that we've got everything kind of in place is that our numbers are maybe too close to the points, right? So maybe if we go up, back up here with our percentage labels, if we take it to like 2.75 and subtract 2.75, so that gets it, I think, a little bit up off. And this 13 was already running kind of into the point. So I think that looks good. All right, now the grand finale, I think, unless somebody spots something, is this background, okay? So I'm going to do another annotate on layout 4, okay? And we'll use geom rect. So do annotate geom equals rectangle, and we'll do x equals, so we'll do 2019.5, and I'm forgetting the arguments for geom rect. So let's do geom rect, and we'll get the arguments here, but let's see. So it's x min, x max, y min, y max. All right. So this is going to be x min, and then x max is going to be 2025.5. Y min is going to be 1. Y max is going to be 75. And then color, let's do brown. that's not what it's going to be, but hey, we'll roll with that for now. Oh, and it's not going to be color, it's going to be fill, because it's a rectangle, and the side of the rectangle is set by fill. Oh, and I forgot a plus sign. Of course. And there's not a geom called rectangle, because that should be rect. All right, I should have known better. And we're getting everything to be brown. So I forgot to do layout equals 4. Okay. There we go. And so now we've got our rectangle being brown, or whatever that color is, but it's also on top of the data, so it's hiding everything. And so let's use our digital color meter to match that color. And so wherever I put brown here, do that. And then this annotate, I want that to go before geom line. Okay, and so we're going to put that down before any of our geoms, so that's laying in the background. And there we go. We now have that nice background matching theirs. All right. Well, I'm impressed with how this came together. Theirs again is up here. Mine is down here. And yeah, up, wrong window here. All right, there we go. So again, theirs is on the left. Let me make it a little bit bigger. Mine on the right. And make that a bit bigger. They can overlap a little bit. Oh, whatever. Right? And I think it's a pretty good match. One, I mean, I think the fonts aren't a perfect match, but I think they're pretty good. I think for me, the challenging part was perhaps getting these numbers placed, as well then as doing the vertical grids or lines between each of the facets, and then coloring the background. Okay. Well, let me know what you think of this, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with this, and I think it worked out pretty well. One other thing that we did, you might recall, is that we got the data from a CSV file from Pew Research, and that those columns were being ordered by the percentage of US adults. So we went on also and got that data frame and then used that to make the variables and the order of the variables that we then use to order the different facets. Okay, so hopefully you enjoyed this, and let me know what you think of this. And as always, if you have ideas for other visualizations that you would like to see me recreate here, by all means holler, and I would love to do this. This is a suggestion that came from one of you users. The Pew Research Center has a lot of interesting plots. I think next week's will also be from Pew, or actually it's going to be from a different place, not from Pew. Sorry. Anyway, take that back. But they've also got some pretty nice visualizations on timely topics and things that are of general interest. So anyway, please let your friends know what we are doing here on Code Club, and we will see you next time. So keep practicing with